Most team members in small businesses actually do not need job descriptions. And when I said that on internet, the comments went wild. And the thing is, first of all, people don't like to sit for the entire story, so obviously they don't see my perspective. And we live in such an echo chamber that so many people just do what their coaches told them or what has always been done, or they allow their feelings to get in the way of just making critical decisions. You hate corporate, you left corporate, maybe you never even worked corporate, but you knew deep down that from day one, you didn't want to build that kind of life. You wanted freedom, flexibility, you wanted ownership, you wanted to call your own shots, but yet still we picked up traction, we picked up EOS, you listened to Scaling Up, and every video about building a company that runs without you, you are watching it. You did everything people told you to do because you genuinely wanted to become a better CEO. And you're still overwhelmed, your team still comes to you, you are still making most of all the decisions, but guess what? You have an issue meeting payroll sometimes. You're building more structure and the business isn't getting any easier. It happens to the best of us, and that's why I know so many people get irritated, because for those of us who are a part of a support team, we know that clients like to scope creep. And I don't think it makes you a bad CEO or a bad leader. I just think that you've been following operations advice that was not written for you. They were written for businesses that look nothing like yours. And that's the problem that we're fixing today. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Zara. I'm a fractional COO, helping remote CEOs, coaches, service providers lead their small teams with confidence and build a business that actually gives them options. When I mentioned on the internet, and I think it was Thursday, I was like, yeah, some businesses don't need job descriptions. It really was from the perspective that a lot of times, I don't think that job descriptions should get dismantled or anything. But what I think should happen is that you shouldn't be put in a box in the same way corporate put you in a box. What I think should happen is that we need to have a better anchor on managing people's capacity, because in a small business, we're all doing a lot. We're all operating different hats so that we can keep the business to pay you. So there is no true, I'm a fractional COO. I go in and out of different roles all the time. When something breaks and the one executive assistant that we have on the team is fully capped, do you think I'm going to say, oh, because I'm a COO, I'm not going to do it? No, I'm going to jump in because I work with small businesses. So what needs to happen is that we need to be clearer, one, on the expectations that we have for people. We need to be clearer on managing work. We need to have visibility over the work that's being done so we can manage capacity. And then from there, we need to have a general understanding. So if I was supposed, I don't like to reinvent a wheel, so I'm not going to give job descriptions a whole other name, but technically what we need is a job guide that more or less keeps us in our range and in our scope based on what we know we're good at. But also I think sometimes job descriptions box people in. So instead of building a job description, like for example, so we worked with a surgery clinic a few months ago, and this surgery clinic was a small clinic. They have like 2 practitioners and they have a team that presents. Instead of boxing them into certain job descriptions, we had to make 2 levels of what their org chart would look like. What tasks do we need for the here and now? For the stage that this business is currently in, what tasks are there to keep the business running in each particular department? Who are the people who sit in those roles, and how can those roles overlap? So that's like the version A of what the company looks like. And then we're like, okay, when we get to this level and we can afford these people, that's when we're going into org chart number 2. And this is something that I definitely, people are like, people don't talk about this. This is something people do not talk about. The fact that org charts box you in, and org charts typically do not work for small businesses because they were not meant for us. Even as the CEO, yes, you are the leader in your business, but the reason there has always been a conflict in the person in a small business calling themselves as CEOs, because you cannot just do C-suite things, because you're still most times the head coach. In Jamaica, we say head cook and bottle washer. You are doing all these things, and you can't just be focusing on high level things when you're not making any money. And I've had to say that to myself all the time too. I'm not trying to bully you, but I'm trying to set the realistic expectations. Somebody said, oh, you can build a business that can run without you. And then because you think that you can build a business that runs without you, you pull yourself so much out of the process with your little small business. And then you start treating people bad because you're overcompensating for the fact that you're not in the process. Then you're overwhelming somebody who is supposed to just be doing a specific task. Then that person feels boxed in because that's not what their job description says. And then they don't really buy into the culture and the vision, so they're not able to go above and beyond. Do you see how that just looks like a disaster in the making? So we need to treat our businesses as small businesses. You can't planning a company retreat and you're hardly paying yourself. You're talking about org charts and these massive team handbooks when you barely know what you're supposed to be doing as a CEO. You don't even know how to plan your day yet. Let's start there, because if you don't, your profit is going to be shrinking. You're going to have this massive team with a bunch of people who are sitting in their own lane doing only these 5 things that they said they would do. Instead, you need people who will do the roles that are in the business. Can you do the job or can you not? And that's why I don't get caught up on job descriptions. I use titles and all those things for SEO purposes because I have to explain what I do, right? Can I do this for this business or can I not? And if you have applied, it means that you said yes to doing it. So that's kind of where I would start. I would think about, what does this business need? Can I put all of these responsibilities and can I make up a title? Make up a title, for crying out loud here. You don't need a sales manager, a head of CTO, all these things. Not right now. Not while your business is barely making a profit. Your profit is shrinking while your revenue is growing. I see founders hiring because they think that they're supposed to have a head of marketing, and somebody said that you have to have an operations manager, you have to have a client success manager, you have to have a sales team, you need an executive assistant, and these people only do what they have to do. And before they know it, their payroll has exploded. But guess what? The revenue hasn't grown enough to support that, because the truth is, hires are long-term plays and the business is making more money than ever, but the owner is somehow paying themselves pennies. That's not growth. You're in a trap. And if you're paying yourself pennies, it has to be because you have a long play, and that long play has to be intentional. Another major cost is that every new hire creates more complexity. You actually don't get more freedom right away. Instead of making the business easier right off the bat, every addition creates another meeting. You need to create another approval process. You need to be following somebody's 90-day plan, their KPIs, another person to manage. And you said that you wanted freedom, but no, you've built this major organization that you don't even have the money and the structure to fund. You're also rebuilding the same thing that you're trying to escape. You leave your corporate job, you're like, I'm free from my 9 to 5. But the truth is, my friend, unknowingly you've built yourself one. You've recreated the same environment. I am saying this from a very personal place because I realized this is something that I had to learn. I had to learn this when I realized I had an inflated team, my profit margins were low, and I still didn't have the time because ownership wasn't transferred. Somewhere along the way, I had to really ask myself, what's important here? Business is not my baby. It's an inanimate thing, and I need to make logical decisions. So I can't be treating this small business in the same way somebody who has a $500 million corporation is treating it, because success isn't measured by how many big establishments we have. It's measured by whether this small business is giving me the life that I wanted when I started it. And that's where you want to work from. No, when I mentioned that on Threads, and I was like, I truly believe that small businesses actually don't really need job descriptions. Obviously, I said that so that I could spark conversation. But I can't forget, I worked with a consulting business and they were generating about $500K a year from the outside, everything looked impressive. They spoke about their team members. Everybody had these great titles. They had all these meetings happening constantly. And on paper, it looked like it was a company that was growing. But behind the scenes, it was a whole different ballgame because profit margins were shrinking. The founder was exhausted and everyone seemed involved in everything. And when everybody is involved in everything, nobody truly owned anything, and everybody kind of stuck in their own boxes saying, this is only what I will do. The business grew faster than the systems could keep up with, and we weren't creating systems for the business. We were creating standard job descriptions based on a course that the founder had taken and told them that, oh, you need these roles. Your business has very specific needs based on how your business operates. We can always follow the same framework. Your business is so different. So instead of starting with an org chart, We started with the owner's life. And that's what I would recommend that you do. How much do you want to pay yourself? How much do you want to work? How much, we asked her how much did she want to, well, obviously, she wanted to set aside for taxes, how much flexibility she needed, what options she wanted for herself in the next 5 or 10 years. Did she want an exit? Did she want to, did she want to stay in delivery? She actually was planning for maternity leave, and we have a whole maternity leave planning video. I'll pop it right here about like what to think about, because that's something that I think women in business struggle with. But those questions mattered way more than deciding whether you need another manager for what, or you need to have a job description for your executive assistant. No, you need to know what are the daily, weekly, monthly tasks for executive assistant. What does capacity look like, and manage that accordingly. And once we understood that, then we managed accordingly. We looked at her revenue, looked at her profit margins, and we identified how much the business actually had available. After meeting her financial goals, that's when we decided which roles were necessary, which systems that we needed to put in place, which tech tools we could invest in. And what we realized was that 1, she was overpaying for tech, her overhead was too high, and 3, she had 3 full-time employees. She was still actively involved in delivery, and she generally enjoyed the parts of her business, so we didn't need 3 full-time employees. So instead of building this expensive corporate structure, we brought in contractors, and those contractors had, very clear lanes, but also they were open to making sure that when the lanes switched, we could add additional time. If we were paying for the people who were paying hourly, we could format the projects, and that worked incredibly well. So one of the biggest changes I make in the way I do business, and I learned from doing that project, is that we have not the traditional job descriptions. Instead, we have job guides, because small businesses don't need 20-page documents listing every single responsibility someone could ever perform. What small businesses need is clarity. What are you in charge of? What are the things that I'm expecting of you? How do I manage your capacity? So we replace those documents with role guides. Who owns this outcome? Who's holding it? What are they responsible for? How do we measure success? Which KPI tells that they're doing a great job? What does A+ work look like? That's it. Because when I think about business operations, it's not just about creating more paperwork or more things to do, but we need more clarity, we need visibility. And here's what changed for her. Profit margins drastically improved. She eventually got her time back, and people knew exactly what they owned and exactly what success looked like in their role, and that's what's important. Stupid simple systems. The business got simpler, and simpler always means better. And that's the mindset that I want you to have. It works for these big corporations, but it doesn't always work for you, and it's okay. So don't let anybody bully you into saying, oh, you're not doing your rocks for EOS. EOS was not built for somebody making $1 million a year. You cannot afford a director. You can't. You cannot afford a full-time integrator. So if you do need an integrator at $1 million a year, that's when you come to people like me who offer this fractionally, because we do have fractional COO services. Shameless plug for Founder Be Free Ops Agency. That's why we do what we do, because we understand how small businesses run. There is no way you're going to be able to afford a proper full-time COO that's going to operate at the level that you want them to operate. They're also, if somebody kind of falls into that position, they're going to be doing multiple things, because guess what? It's a small business. We all should be invested in the growth of the team so we can keep our jobs. I don't have time arguing over what I will not do and what I will not do. Do I have the capacity or do I not? And that's why being able to manage capacity, being able to track your output is so important. Because if I'm like, I'm on a team, and the founder, he called me, I'm the fractional COO for the team, and he mentioned something about where the ops manager is building out their ClickUp. ClickUp is a project management tool for people who do not know. And I was like, yeah, no problem. I am going to hop in and do a part of the ClickUp build because I know how to do it. And the company needs this right now. Do I have capacity? Yes or no? It's up to me to be able to look on my to-do list and say, do I have the capacity for it? And I think a lot of times the perspective that I got in the comments, they're like, yes, we need job descriptions because of scope creep, blah, blah, blah. Scope creep is our decision. We allow people to scope or creep. And if you are a leader, you have to also protect your team against scope creeping. And that's why I said, let's look on what your business needs. Don't just go hire a social media manager. You don't always need one. Maybe really who you needed was a content assistant based on what your business needs in this season. Because if you hire a social media manager and you're asking them to do ads, they're going to say, no, this is going to be additional. The business didn't really need a social media manager because you had somebody on your team who could have helped you to cut up your one YouTube video into short form clips, and then you could have hired an ad manager to do the ads if necessary. And that's where you're able to decide, is this scope creep or is this not? Sometimes roles have to cross. But when we get caught up on, oh, I'm at this and I'm at that and I don't do that, you obviously do not want to work. And I'd love if more leaders would lead with the knowledge that we have to operate our companies, our small businesses as what they are. They are small businesses. Let's focus on trying to figure out how you can pay for insurance before you hire somebody else, or before you decide to host this major thing, before you decide to inflate your offers when we haven't even gotten one offer off the ground. So yes, what are the plays? You know, I always love talking about what are the plays. Play 1, build your business backwards from your life. Because when you have a small business and you've decided to build this, you built it to serve your life. And we need to understand what is our lifestyle design and what is our business design. Are we building this business to exit someday? Are we building this business as a legacy business? Are we building this business to, eventually pop out as a chairman? Most founders build their business forward. They start with the offer, they get clients, they hire people, and then one day they look up and they say, I feel a little trapped. But the move is really to start with the end in mind. What income do you want? What does freedom look like for you? Do you want to sell? And how do we now optimize this business for selling? What does your schedule look like? What kind of family life? Do you have kids? That type of thing. And you're going to build your business to deliver that. Not to impress anyone, not to match what somebody else said your org chart should look like, or what somebody else said your job description should look like, the roles that you must have. Stop building your business around somebody else's definition of success. Play number 2, hire because you've reached a capacity problem, not because of an org chart and what an org chart says you should have. When I think about roles in business, I had to switch my frame of mind from thinking about roles as these are things that have to happen and how can I now have a measurable bottleneck. I see founders just do things because that's what a successful company does, and they want to look like the real deal. They need real titles. Well, here's a question. What specific bottleneck does this title solve? If you can't answer that clearly, you're not ready to hire for that role. And can you afford to invest in that role, especially if it doesn't make money for the next year? Sometimes you think you need more software, more frameworks, more organizational things. What you really need is clarity and visibility around the work that already exists inside your business. Because as I've always said, tech doesn't solve confusion, it scales confusion. So before we automate, before we talk about AI employees, before you hire, I want you to truly ask yourself, what are we asking people to really do? And why does this actually matter? Play number 3, understand that businesses move through seasons. So you need to identify the season that you're in. Not every season is a growth season. And that's not because you're failing or anything, but just based on ebbs and flows. Sometimes your focus is going to be shifting. Sometimes your focus should be simplifying, should be improving profitability. Sometimes it should be stabilizing what you already have before you add anything else. And like there's this like cycle in my brain. When you just start off, you're trying to get leads, and you want, that's going to be your main focus. That's where you spend most of your time. And then as the leads come in, you're like, okay, I now need to create structure to be able to deliver to these people. So you're like, I need to create something to be able to grow this. So now you're like, okay, I found a great lead generation magnet. So you kind of ease up off the lead generation magnet a little bit. Or you found a way to put a sales system in place. And then you've shifted your focus from marketing and sales, and now your focus is on operations because you need to bolster that. But then you spend some time in operations and you've built out so much, you're like, okay, I have this now because you're building for the level above you. And then you're like, okay, but no, I need to make sure that financially we're in a place that makes sense. So you're playing around with things like profit margins and making sure that you're bringing on the right people, etc. And now that you have that and you have all that infrastructure, then you need more leads again because you need to be able to have something to put in the infrastructure that you've created and the team that you've built. And that's kind of like how the cycle goes, but at different points in time, just like the weather, we're on different parts of the cycle. And there's nothing wrong based on what's happening in your life with deciding that the season is about making your current business work better instead of making it bigger. Better first, bigger next. That's leadership. When I think about books like EOS, E-Myth, the Scaling Up frameworks, I think those books are great books. I've read so many of them. But those books were built for a different season. They're not considering your $1 million budget, your 2.5, your little 500K. They don't consider the fact that you're still learning your business. And as a founder, sometimes it means that you still need to be in it. They don't consider most of us. And most of us actually didn't start a business to build $100 or $200 million company. Context is a thing. A lot of those books they leave out. And without context, the best framework in the world just creates even more confusion. And I want us to be super intentional also about the fact that all of us do not build businesses in the USA. We build businesses all over the world with different systems. So the play that I'm going to talk about next is building your business for your stage. Don't imitate a $50 million company. Make your business easier to run today. Simple, scalable. Say it with me. Simple is scalable. Simple is scalable. Simple is scalable. Got it. When you try to implement corporate level systems, right? In a 5-person business, what you don't get efficiency. You get bureaucracy, you get chaos without the system to support it. So start with what you need right now. What are the 3 or 4 things that if they were clear and consistent would make your business run smoother today? I want you to start there and build a system that fits your stage, then grow into the next one. Remember what I said about the client. We built a version 1 for the medical company, and then we also built a version 2 like structure. And I know it's not easy because you want to dream big and you want to think big, but sometimes as the founder, as the CEO, that's what you called upon yourself. But sometimes as the founder and the CEO, you really have to be okay with rolling up your sleeves and being in the grind for a little bit more. I am sorry, I can't promise you like those people are like, I'm going to teach you how to build a business that runs without you. It doesn't just come like that. It takes effort. It takes intentional effort. And I think that if you put these things in place, then you can start building a business that runs without you. But you won't get there by just taking something that was not built for you. So if you're sitting in your business right now and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I want you to do these 4 things this week. First, what kind of business do I want to build? Write it down. Not what somebody else's success look like, but yours. The income, the schedule, the family life, and the long-term options. Remember, are you building this to sell? Are you building this so that you can step into a chairman position? Are you building this to just give your team members equity? Do you plan to go on maternity leave? What are your options that you're looking for? Secondly, look at your current structure and ask what parts exist only because I thought that that's what successful companies were supposed to look like, but I don't really use it. And be honest with yourself. I had to die. It was not an easy process. And third, I want you to ask yourself, if I was starting this business again at my current revenue, would I build it the same way? And of course, I have to ask you to think about one system that you think you can simplify this week. Not add, but simplify. Because the only thing that creates momentum is clarity. And right now, complexity is costing you a little bit. So the bottom line, you're a little bit overwhelmed because you are building with a playbook that was written for big corporation, written for somebody 10 times your size, with 10 times your budget and 10 times your team, 10 times your expertise, 10 times your consultants, 10 times your manpower, 10 times all the other things that they didn't tell you about. And you've been trying to run a very small founder-led business using corporate rules that were never really designed for you. Good operations aren't really about making your business look bigger. They're about making your business work better. So build the business backwards from your life, hire to solve real problems, not made up problems, respect your season, and build systems that fit where you are right now, not where someone else told you. That's how you build a business that gives you options. And that's it for today's episode. Remember, founder freedom isn't something you earn someday. It's something you design into your business today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please, friends, like, share with a friend, and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. Until next time, build a business that works with you, without you, or beyond you.